everyone, and welcome to Teaching Natural. My name's Dare. I'm a 7th year high school English teacher in SoCal or Southern California, and this is my video on my grading policies and practices in my classroom, as well as some things that are policies and procedures of my entire school. To start off, I have a minimum F of a 40%. So that means if a student does not attempt a skill, does not turn in an assignment at any point in the school year, they would get a 40%, which would be an F. This is an agreement that my English department for the 9th grade has decided on, as well as my co-curricular partners, such as the biology teachers, the math teachers, and the geography teachers that teach freshmen. We have decided on a 40% minimum F. And this is so that we are grading for equity and we are making sure we are all setting our 9th graders up to be successful and raising our graduation rates. And so I personally love having a 40% minimum F. I have seen so much success with that, especially with the students who get demotivated very quickly. If they see a 13%, they wonder, why am I even coming to school? What's the point? And then they start to be behavioral challenges in the classroom. They start goofing off because it's not that they don't want to be successful, but it is they see mathematically there is no way to pass the class, so why am I going to give that effort? But if there's a 40% F, you can start with, hey, 40%, well, a 60% is a D. You can do this. And then once you get to the 60%, hey, a 70% is a C. You can do this. And so they are more motivated when the goalpost is not so far away for them. So I have loved having a minimum F. We also had a student who she and her brother were in the same class, and she tried absolutely very hard. She was doing all of the work, but she just was not understanding it. So she was getting a 50%. And when we had the minimum F at a 50%, her brother was not doing any of the work. He was attempting nothing. And so he had a 50% F. And she was like, what's the point? Why am I trying? Why am I struggling with this and stressing myself out when my brother is doing nothing and he is getting the exact same grade as I am? And she was right. And we felt the same way. It was frustrating that a student who had tried really hard but just didn't understand the skill or could not demonstrate the skill was getting a 50%, and a student who was not trying at all was getting the same exact score. So instead of doing a 50%, we did lower it to a 40% minimum F, and I will always teach like that. I just absolutely love having a 40% minimum F. I should say a 40% minimum F is for a student who didn't attempt the skill. That's not for that's not for plagiarism or cheating. If a student plagiarizes or cheats, that's a 0%. There's no coming back from that. That's academic dishonesty, and you have not shown that you can, or the student has not shown that they can demonstrate the skill. The distinction between a 0% and a 40% for cheating and plagiarism versus not attempting a skill also incentivizes honesty and integrity, because if a student sees, okay, if I don't cheat, it's a 40%. If I attempt it, it's a 50%. But if I try to pass somebody else's work as my own, that's a 0%. That's a very heavy punishment for plagiarism and cheating. And so students see that we value learning more so than we want them to just turn something in or, cheat and try to get a grade for it. So that's the 40% F policy that the freshman teachers at my school have. My school is an IB school, so we grade on a 0 to 8 scale, and all of our rubrics are 0 to 8. So in the grade book, a student will see a score from 0 to 8. I'll put that up on the screen now. And so this 0 to 8 scale is pretty easy and simple. I love it. The only thing that can be frustrating and confusing for students and parents is a 0. Obviously, most people think 0 and they think, oh, you didn't turn it in. And we have to explain, no, a 0 means they did turn it in, but they failed the assignment, so they get a 50%. The code DNA did not attempt means they did not attempt the skill. They didn't turn it in, 40%. I have had some students and teachers and parents who have been like, you're giving them 40% for doing nothing. And the way I explain it to most people is using Simone Biles. Simone Biles is arguably the greatest gymnast in the world. And yet in the Olympics, there were skills that she did not attempt when she had the twisties. And there were also some times when she fell on the balance beam. Just because she didn't attempt a skill or she fell, that doesn't mean she isn't arguably the greatest gymnast in the world. It just means that she had a moment where she stumbled or where she just could not attempt the skill. You translate that to students, there are moments where a student will stumble and they can't attempt something, but that doesn't mean that they cannot demonstrate the skill at a high level. So that's the explanation there. To a teacher and to somebody who loves math, you can say there are 4 assignments. If a student gets a 0% on one assignment because they didn't attempt it, they now have to get 100% perfect scores on the next 3 assignments in order to just have a C in the class. But that C isn't accurately representing the student's understanding of the skill because they just had 3 masteries 100%. But those 100% are working so hard because they didn't attempt the skill here. And when I explain it to that way, most people understand it and most people are like, wow, that makes sense, really understands it. Editing dare here. I realized I did not talk about my late work policy or my resubmission policy. So late work policy is that students have 1 week after a due date to turn in the assignment for anything that is not a final assignment. So if a assignment is due Friday, 5 p.m., the student doesn't turn it in, they have until that next Friday by 5 p.m. to turn in the assignment. I do not take points off for late work because I want to make sure that grades are a true reflection of the student's skill. I do not accept finals assignments late because I need to grade them in time for final grades. So they do have to turn in their finals on time, but any other assignment that's not a final assignment, I allow 1 week late policy. This makes sure that I am accommodating my students who have IEPs and 504s, and also just any student can benefit from a late policy. We know that life happens. When it comes to test corrections and resubmissions, I allow students to correct any assignment that they scored a 0, 1, or 2 on, meaning they got a 50%, a 60%, or a 65% on the assignment. So for a test, they'll come in, they'll get their missed test, they will correct the questions, get the correct answer, and then they also have to explain why that answer is correct so that I can see their learning process. This is to make sure that my students have multiple opportunities to show that they can meet a standard. And it also makes sure that my students who have 504s or IEPs, they have the ability to correct their work and they have the ability to make up assignments in order to show their understanding. I'd say like the last major grading policy in my class is that if a student has an F in my class and they average a D on the finals, they get a D in my class because my finals cover all of these standards that they've learned throughout the year. So they have a reading final, a speaking and listening final, a language final, and a writing final. Those are the categories of my state standards. And so if they can average a D on all of those finals, they have shown that they understand the skill at a D level. A D is a passing for graduation in California. So if they have an F and they can demonstrate an average of a D on the finals, they have a D in my class by the end. And this is really to make sure that I'm not privileging or rewarding the students who get a skill fast as opposed to get the skill, right? If a student is struggling at the beginning of the semester, but on the finals, they can show that they understand the skills that we've covered in the class, of course they pass the class. And with that on my finals, I would just add that some students are like, Miss B, can you round it because I'm at a 79.5? Or Miss B, can you round because I'm at a 89? And so I'll tell them, okay, I'll average your finals. And if your finals on average are the higher grade, you get the higher grade. Absolutely. Because they have demonstrated that they understand the skill at that level. So that's just a little bit of an explanation of how grades work at my school. How do grades work at your school? Are you also an IB school? Have you tried using a minimum F with a code like DNA did not attempt? Or are you someone who says, no, they didn't turn it in, it's a 0%? Are you someone who's playing with the idea and you're grappling with your own understanding of grading for skill versus grading citizenship? Did they turn it in? Okay. In the meantime and in between time, take care of yourselves and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.